When COVID-19 spread in Canada, women were affected beyond the virus. Women accounted for almost 2/3 of early job losses, despite making up only half the paid workforce. Risks of violence increased, and calls to crisis lines surged. Demands of caregiving, homeschooling, and work skyrocketed. The virus can infect anyone, but the pandemic's impacts are different for some people. It has deepened inequalities for diverse women and two-spirit, trans, and non-binary people. As we rebuild from the pandemic, we can't accept a new normal where people are worse off than before. Let's reset normal by putting gender equality at the center, because gender equality puts everyone in a position to thrive. Reset normal, so everyone gets a living wage and equal pay, so everyone is safe from gender-based violence. So childcare, elder care, and housing are safe, affordable, and accessible. Act now. Let's reset normal. Sign the petition.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Andrea, and I work with the Canadian Women's Foundation, and today I am here with Farzana Doctor. Hello, good to see you. Thank you for joining.
Andrea. Thank you for having me.
So we are very excited to get into this. We are here to talk about this just newly, freshly launched book, 7, from Farzana Doctor, and she is with us, and she's going to tell us all about the book and all about the process of writing, and really give us a great insider look on what this book is all about and the stories behind it. It's more than one story, and that's what we love about it, the multiple voices that are reflected here. So again, I'm Andrea. I work with the Canadian Women's Foundation, and before we get into it, I'm just going to show you a really quick video about the Canadian Women's Foundation and explain what we're all about.
We've worked hard and made history many times. We've gotten this far because together we are tireless. That doesn't mean we don't get tired. It means we help each other continue on. And knowing one voice is strong, but the power of thousands or millions is stronger. We are the tireless, and together we will achieve gender equality.
So the Canadian Women's Foundation, as you might know, is Canada's public foundation for gender equality. We support women, girls, and everybody affected by gender inequality to move out of poverty, out of violence, and into confidence and leadership. These days, we're really focused on addressing the unique ways that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted diverse women and girls, and what we need to do to ensure a recovery process that resets normal. It's the way we've been looking at it, and make sure that it's better for everyone, because we know when women and girls thrive, everyone thrives. And that's why we've launched the Tireless Together Fund. We want to make sure that women and girls in every province and territory can access services that are designed for their unique needs. So I would just like to encourage you to please give to this important effort if you're able to give at this time by clicking on the donate button or giving below at canadianwomen.org. So you can just go to that website, canadianwomen.org, and you'll find the way to give. And I'll just give you a quick introduction to our guest. As I mentioned, Farzana, she works as a writer, activist, and a psychotherapist. As a teenager, she became interested in community organizing and activism on issues including the environment, on gender violence, and 2S LGBTQ+ rights. She went on to study social work and practice in a variety of settings before starting her own practice for individuals and couples. She describes herself as a lifelong writer and has written several books prior to her latest novel, 7, as we mentioned, we're going to speak about today. Her second novel, actually, 6 Metres of Pavement, it won a 2012 Lambda Literary Award and was shortlisted for the 2012 Toronto Book Award. Her third novel, All Inclusive, was a Kobo 2015 National Post Best Book of the Year book. And she also writes poetry and is currently working on a young adult novel. So very dynamic writing background you got there. And before we get into the meat of it, I just want to let you know that you can buy 7 wherever books are sold. And please support your indie bookstore if you can. That would be really wonderful. It's there for you in audio, book format, as well as ebook. Before we get super started on this, I just want to let you know that if we get cut off, just hang tight. We're going to come right back on. Sometimes the technology does not work for us, but we'll be right on, so you hang on. And also, please don't click on any links that you don't recognize below. Sometimes people do things that are not cool on the internet and on social media, so we don't want you to click on anything that you don't recognize. If you do want to go to a website or you want to visit our website, you go directly to canadianwomen.org and check it out there. So welcome, Farzana. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and how wonderful all the stuff that your organization is doing.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Trying hard, and we know that a lot of communities are struggling right now, but they're also very resilient. And we're going to talk about resilience, I think, in our chat right now. So let's just launch into it. Your new novel, Seven, has been described as a rich, soulfully written novel about inheritance and resistance. It's focused on a woman named Sharifa who goes to India with her family and is drawn to research her great-great-grandfather's life. But at the same time, she's also connected to a group of feminists addressing Khatna, an old ritual they're speaking out against, and they call it female genital cutting. And sometimes that's referred to as FGM, FGC. These threads and relationships all come together in the story in a really stunning and page-turning way. And you've said that as a writer, you explore the culture and traditions of your family's community, how they play out in India, how they play out in a global context in the diaspora way. So share more about how your own experiences and the journey towards writing this book intersected.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Back in 2015, I started getting involved with We Speak Out, which is an organization that works against Khatna in our Dawadi Bora community. So I was in the thick of kind of learning about all of the issues around how you end a practice like this. I was also muddling through understanding my own experiences of trauma around this issue. And at the same time, I was writing, and fully formed fictional scenes were kind of coming out of me. So it was very much an experience of being a writer, a survivor, and an activist, all of those things coming together. Also, the thread that there's a thread through the novel of the great-great-grandfather that my character is researching. So there's another personal piece in there, in that that character is inspired by some of the things I learned about my great-great-grandfather, who is very much a revered figure within my community. And I see we have some phishing scams that people are posting. So don't click on those links. They did that for my launch as well.
Yeah, don't get fooled and people stop doing bad things. Okay, so I also really enjoyed this book a lot. My family is from an immigrant family. I'm from an immigrant family. We are from Guyana. And it really got me thinking, culture and community is always shifting. And I think that every one of us, in whatever culture or community that we're in, it doesn't matter. At some point, we find ourselves struggling between honoring our community and our culture and sometimes pushing to shift them and change them. And we all come to different conclusions in the process. And it's even more challenging, I think, when gendered expectations and gendered stereotypes come into play in the mix. And I found that your novel was so beautiful in just demonstrating the different kinds of feminist resistance in this community, past, present, and actually future as well, too, which was really cool. So I really want to know, how did you choose to write the story from this perspective? And what do you hope it helps readers understand? And yes, Cheryl, you are able to watch this later, so no worries if you need to catch this at a later point in time.
So I really wanted to have a very nuanced approach, because you don't want to write a novel that's about a difficult issue and just kind of lecture people about things. You want the reader to kind of come along with a character to understand the issues as they go, right? So I showed Sharifa at the beginning of the novel is kind of clueless about these issues. She goes to India. She finds herself in the midst of all of this controversy around Khatna. she has two different cousins on opposite ends of the issue. One is quite orthodox and thinks that Khatna is just a normal religious ritual. And then she has this other cousin who is an activist and is saying that it's child abuse. So my character kind of moves along and figures things out for herself. I also threw in some historical activism that was fictional. It's something that I imagine could have happened, but I don't know for sure. But I threw in some of that, and that's something that Sharifa kind of learns about as she goes as well, because she's kind of sleuthing out her great-great-grandfather's story. And as she's sleuthing that out, she also learns about her own story.
You know, what's really fascinating is that resistance, that it shows up in different ways. Talk a little bit about that resistance that you have imagined in the book, and also the resistance that's happening now in community. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll start with what's actually happening. I'm part of We Speak Out, which is wespeakout.org. If anyone wants to look us up, you can follow on Twitter and Facebook. So in that sense, the resistance is a lot of community dialogue, trying to normalize the conversation around Khatna so that people can talk about it and talk about the impacts about it. I think it's such a taboo subject that until recently, nobody talked about it. And that's part of why this really terrible practice managed to continue for such a long time, right? If people are unable to talk about it and wonder about it, and is this harmful, is this problematic, they won't change, right? So that's one of the things. And We Speak Out has created petitions because, the Indian government has not banned FGM, and there is this backlash organization that insists that Khatna is not FGM as well. And it seems like the government is buying their side of things. So go to Speak Out on FGM on Twitter and you'll find a petition link there. In Canada, there is an organization, it's a network called the End FGMC Canada Network. It started about a year and a half ago, and I helped, along with 3 other activists, I helped to start that. And if Canadians would like to get involved, that's a great way to get involved. So that organization is really naming the issues in Canada. So in Canada, although FGM has been illegal since, I think, 97, there has been very little action, very few supports for the estimated 100,000 survivors in Canada. No way for if there's vacation cutting to prevent any of that from happening. So, I think that's how some of the resistance happens. It happens through this very overt activism. I also know that it happens in quieter ways where people are just talking to each other in their homes. And in the book, one of the imagined ways that I think the resistance could happen, and again, it's fictional, is I had one character work with a cutter, pay the cutter to no longer cut, and to do fake Khatnas. So that was an imagined way. Yeah, but I think the other way that it's happening in a very underground way is there are people who will say to elders who are pressuring them to have Khatna on their daughters, they'll say, yeah, we had it done, and they don't actually go. So there's ways that it happens in a less overt way, more subversive.
So I think you've spoken to this. Everyone who reads your book will come with their own lens, and they will see the issues and the stories with their own perspectives. Tell me what you hope the impact this book will have on any reader who's coming to this, maybe learning about things for the first time.
So I think one of the things I would really like people to leave is feeling that they've read a novel that they enjoyed. I worked hard to create the balance between writing a novel that is enjoyable and light and fun, as well as addressing a pretty hard issue. So I think that's what I would first like people to understand. And I dropped in the issues in a way that is almost, and fiction can do this, right? In fiction, you can drop in issues in sort of a sneaky way, and people get quite educated and they develop empathy for experiences that aren't their own. But for people who aren't from my community, I think what I'd really like people to understand is that Kutna and other forms of female genital cutting is not that different from other forms of patriarchal violence that happen to women and non-binary people across the planet. So it's not that different from rape culture or all the ways that our bodies get shamed, all the ways that we get gaslit. It's all connected.
I really appreciate that. I think sometimes the mythologies around things that happen in different communities, and we can talk about racism and we can talk about stereotypes. We like to create kind of frames around them that make them seem foreign, make them seem exotic. And I like the way that your book really speaks to these issues as challenging patriarchy, challenging male dominance, challenging the kinds of things that we actually have to challenge in every community, regardless of which community we're a part of, and regardless of whether or not we're back home or we're in a immigrant context. There's a lot of work for us to do. So I'm really curious about your thought here in the story and in life. When you challenge these oppressive dynamics, of course, it leads to different outcomes, and it can be positive outcomes, and at the same time actually have difficult repercussions as well. Like sometimes relationships get broken. Sometimes you have to deal with some backlash, as you had mentioned. So do you have thoughts and advice for those of us who might be doing feminist resistance, resisting the patriarchy in our own communities? What can we do to deal with that today and still persist through in those difficult consequences?
I think it's hard, right? I think self-care is huge. We talk about self-care and most of us don't practice it very well, but we do need to take breaks from the work. We need to be able to talk to other people about the impacts the work is having on us. I think as well, we need to probably pace ourselves really well. And I think we need to be real about the vicarious trauma that we can experience when we do this kind of work. So perhaps we're not working on an issue that we've ourselves experienced, but we're hearing lots of stories. We have to be real about that so that we're not burning out in the process. And perhaps also thinking a little bit about expectations. This work is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And how do we remain hopeful? I was listening to the audiobook of Deborah Frances White's book, The Guilty Feminist. She also has a podcast, and she talks about how activists need to be something like 80% hopeful and 20% dissatisfied. So that's an interesting mix, right? Like we have to feel like this is going to do something. We have to feel like we're having some impact.
That's actually really, really interesting, because I would feel that, well, when I think about my own life, it's been 50-50 sometimes, best at times. Sometimes it's been 80-20. And I don't know that I was coming to the work in a healthy place. And I don't know that I was staying in a healthy place and even being able to celebrate the victories. As you said, it's a slog. So, you have to celebrate along the way. When you're feeling 80%, agitating, 20% hopeful, it doesn't allow you to see all those things. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you feel that we need to stay motivated in this context where sometimes you don't feel balanced?
Yeah, I think, I don't have any clear answers about that. I feel like I struggle myself, and it's often when I have crossed my own boundaries and I feel like a mess afterwards, that I will step back and sort of say, what just happened here, and what don't I want to do anymore? Or what do I need a break around? I also like learning about global social justice movements, because that helps me to have a sense of like, that this campaign that I've just been part of that maybe seemed to have failed or didn't do anything. Well, that's okay, because it's just a little step in the overall history of this movement. So So also kind of learning about larger context can help make you feel a little less ineffective. I also like to know, like I like to very clearly stand firm on where do I find joy in the work? Like, what are the contributions that I want to make to the work, and what don't I want to do? So I know that I'm someone who hates sitting through meetings. I just can't stand meetings, but I'm good if you give me a specific task or if I have a particular role. I also know that I like to write, and this novel is a contribution to the End FGM movement. I like to write fiction. I like to do this in creative ways. I like to write stories. So for me, this is one of my joyful contributions. And if I have to be in a meeting, it's going to be one of those things that makes me feel burnt out.
We all have our roles, right? We all have our roles, and it doesn't live and die with us. We don't have to be everything to everyone. We have to actually be what we are to ourselves, and then perhaps think about what we can contribute to others. Thank you very much about this. I think this kind of segues into my next question for you. You have training and experience in social work and also in psychotherapy. And I am curious about how these things play out in your fiction and maybe in your poetry as well too, and then vice versa. How does your poetry or your fiction impact your practice in social work and psychotherapy?
I think I try to keep it really separate, actually, because, when I first started writing, I was really clear that like I didn't want to step over any ethical rules. So I don't write about my clients at all. But I think the indirect place where the two intersect is that as a psychotherapist, I'm swimming in emotions all of the time. So it's very much how I process the world. And so it makes it really possible, I think, for me to write in a way where I have really clear emotional motivations and experiences for my characters. So I think that is the crossover, really. In the same way that you sometimes, as a psychotherapist, have to be really attuned and you're waiting for a client to sort of reveal what they need to reveal. When you're an author, sometimes you have to be in that same attuned, patient place and wait for your characters to tell you what's next.
Oh, I love that. There was a writer, I can't quite remember who it was, but they said, you get specific enough in the details of what you're writing about a character that it starts to transcend, like you talk about body so specific that it transcends body. And it's reminding me of this lesson that she said. She was speaking about body and how you describe physical realities, but I imagine that's the same for emotions. You describe emotions so specifically and you get concrete about it that it starts to transcend emotion and says something actually deeper about a story, about a character, about an issue that could be difficult or could be challenging in the book. Give me a sense of that. I'm asking a very writerly question is what I'm doing. I want a sense of this writerliness and how you work that out in your novels, because really the embodiment of emotions in this was beautiful. Right. And that's what kept me reading.
Thank you. Well, we experience emotions through the body, right? So the body has to be part of it. And, there's this idea that we're not supposed to be telling so much, we're supposed to be showing. And one of the ways that you can show a lot of emotions is in how people move and what people experience in their bodies. So I often think, if I have a line where I have the character saying, or as the narrator, I'm saying, Sharifa felt blah, 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 sad or angry or whatever. I think, oh gosh, no, I've got to edit that. How would that look? How would that feel? Right. And we can all imagine, right? We can all imagine and put ourselves into anger and sadness, and then notice what happens to our belly, what happens to our throat, right? What happens to our heads, right? There's always something. So I often will search for metaphors for all of those things as a way to show emotion. And just also showing sexuality is really important to me too. So many works that I have read, also film and TV, sex starts to happen and then it goes black and then it's end scene. And why are we still working with so many taboos around sexuality? Why aren't we talking, why aren't we breathing more light and air into sexuality? We would all have much healthier sexualities if we could talk about it more. So I also write a lot of sexuality, and I have in this book, partly because it follows my character Sharifa's process. It's very much part of her story. The novel starts out with her, she's had an online affair, and her marriage is in a bit of, not in a good place. And as we move on, we see more of what happens with her and her husband in their sexual life.
So I think this actually speaks to this question here. In a previous interview, you said, I see human beings as completely resilient, and I'm interested in how often it's in odd situations and within strange relationships that we begin to figure out what's going to happen next. Give us a sense of maybe where this has played out in your own life or even in your fiction.
Yeah, in my own life, I think it's often been through following my nose and, meeting somebody, staying open to them, learning something new, often chance meetings, if anything is by chance. I don't know if anything is by chance, but it's often been through these chance meetings that I have taken the next step in my career, or then I've had the next step happen in my writing life, or I've met a new friend who has taught me something really important. So I'll give you an example that relates to this issue. I was just scrolling through Facebook and I saw an article written by a woman named Masuma Rinaldi. And she is the woman who started We Speak Out. And she wrote an article that detailed her own experience of trauma. And I found her on Facebook. I wrote her a message. I didn't even know if she would get the message because we weren't friends. And I just said, thank you for writing that article. It was a pretty brave thing. Up until that point, hardly anyone had done it. So she did write back. She wrote back within 12 hours and she said, hey, I'm starting this thing. Here's the WhatsApp group, you can join it. And then that evolved into We Speak Out. And I was part of the beginnings of all of that. And, up until that point, I really hadn't thought very much about this issue. And it was that chance post and, meeting her virtually that got this whole ball rolling in terms of my activism, got the ball rolling in terms of my own healing work, and then, got this book rolling as well. So that's just one example of how that happens. And I think I might have said that after writing 6 Metres of Pavement, because that's a book where there are 3 characters who are all in really difficult situations, and it's through these chance meetings with one another, through the way that they create chosen family and community, that they start to live better lives. And I think that's what's true for all of us. It's love that makes us resilient, right? It's our communities that make us resilient. It's the way that we are there for each other.
That's beautiful. I love when it's something that is by chance. And I agree with you. I don't know that anything is by chance. When you hear about how often it happens, that's really lovely. Now tell us, in terms of inspiration, who inspires you most as a writer?
So I saw that question earlier and I was like, oh, I don't know. I read a lot as writers. I think we have to, right? We have to read a lot. So there are so many writers who inspire me. I think when I was first starting to write, I aspired to be Zadie Smith. So if I had to pick one person, I would have liked to be her. But since then, there are thousands of writers who I just feel are beautiful writers and who teach me every day, right? Like if you're a writer, you're reading like a writer. So you're noticing how people are using metaphor, how they're using their pacing, how they're making their plots tight. So I'm always learning from everybody.
Anybody who's not a writer who strangely perhaps inspires you in your writing?
For this recent novel, my father was the one who suggested that I do some research about my own great-great-grandfather, and he got me started in the process of, doing some oral history stuff with the family. And then I thought, this guy would make a great character, but I don't know enough about him. I'm not a historical researcher. I don't have those skills. So I knew that if I wanted to really write about my great-great-grandfather, I would have to fictionalize him. And fiction is more fun anyway, right? Like there are ways that we can tie together stories, and we can make meaning out of things by using fiction. So I ended up fictionalizing him. My dad is often, actually, he'll call me up and say, "Hey, why don't you write about this? This could be a movie." He really wants my books to become a movie, and
Oh,
I
yes.
want that. I want that too.
And we have a message here from Dawn, who says, "I salute your courage." So that's lovely. Thank you, Dawn. And Wendy asks, on that note, what are you reading?
So I've been reading a lot. The pandemic has made my reading really slow. Um, but here's a few things. So on audiobook, I was listening to The Guilty Feminist book I mentioned Deborah Francis White. So that's one. I recently read on ebook Ava Homa's Daughters of Smoke and Fire, which details the experience of Kurdish women in Iran, something I knew very little about. And that was a really interesting book and a really great education, right? Because I only knew the headlines before that. Let me just think. I also recently read The Subtweet by Vivek Shreya, big fan. And on my to be read pile is Crosshairs by Catherine Hernandez, but that's sitting and waiting until I have more time.
Yeah, I think this pandemic fooled a lot of us into thinking we'd have time to read. It's like time was not the only factor. It was also your ability to focus and actually have like a healthy mental health day. So there's that. Let's talk about dads for a second. I need to go back to your dad because I love dads. This is my favorite topic, is talking to people about their dads, encouraging them, not bad dads, good dads. You have a good dad who supported you here. Tell me more about dad supporting your writing. How has he helped you?
I think he's just been a really proud dad. He reads everything. I haven't always wanted him to read everything. All inclusive, my last novel had a character who was a swinger. And I said, "Dad, don't read this book." And he said, "Don't worry, I know it's fiction." And I was quite pleased about that, because most people, when they read fiction, assume that the author is the main character, right? So he's just been supportive. I think he's been proud and supportive, and I am really, that's all you really need a good dad to be, right?
Yeah.
He told me the other day that he ordered 6 copies of the book so he could give them away. That's awfully supportive.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I tell people, sometimes I feel like my best family members, they've done enough for me. So when they do things like to support my work or support my writing, or it feels like just icing on top, and it's just so lucky. So that's lovely to hear. I'm going to ask a question. One of our audience members said, who would you cast in the movie version of your book?
Gosh.
What?
Well, can I just say the audiobook has 2 actors, Alora Putnike. Some of you might know her from, she's been in lots and lots of stuff. But if any of you are watching Kim's Convenience, she plays one of the characters. Oh, I can't remember. My brain's not getting there. But Alora Putnike would be great in it. And then the other actor is Raul Baneja, and I think he could play one of the male characters. Yeah, they have done such a good job in the audiobook. Really have done a superb job. Like, all of the subtle ways that they shift the voices for the different characters is like thrilling to me. I've really
Nice.
enjoyed listening to them.
Nice. I love listening to books. It makes me feel smart somehow more than reading, and it also helps me feel like they bring it all to life. So for folks, if you're looking for the audio version of the book, that's available for you as well now too. You have it in paper format, as I have in front of me here. You also have it on e-format that you can get it anywhere where books are sold. And do support your local booksellers who need your help right now, of course. So speaking of CanLit and what it all means, what do you think needs to happen to help remove some of the barriers so more diverse voices come out and more diverse experiences, maybe the hidden experiences that you speak to? How can we make sure that we're opening those doors as opposed to closing them in or making it a special moment in literature?
I think it has to be like every industry across our world, right? And, you can have diversity and inclusion kinds of practices, but they don't do very much, right? What really needs to happen is that all of the people at the very top in leadership positions need to be more like people of color, more people with disabilities, more people with non-binary identities, and so on, right? We just need those people in positions of leadership, I think, and then it will follow from there.
Oh, you're speaking my language. I couldn't say more about how important it is for leadership to be the ones who lead the way. They have the power and they have the ability to shift the priorities of whatever the media is or whatever the organization, whatever the case may be. So I really think that this idea of CanLit opening up, it has to be not so much on the storytellers, but on those who are perhaps gatekeeping and perhaps making choices in the storytelling and publishing process.
Because the storytellers are there. We're there, and we are dealing with gatekeepers, right? So, yes.
Yes. Okay, I have a question from Yanis. Hi, Farzana. What could you highlight about 7? What was the most challenging thing when writing it? This is an interesting question.
Most challenging thing. So I would say it would be like any other book. I don't know that it was specific to this, but it was in the revision stage where I needed to figure out what things I wanted to keep in and what I needed to get rid of. That's probably across all of the books. So I ended up making some choices, and my agent, Rachel Litovsky, helped me quite a bit. For example, at one point I didn't actually have the Abdulali character in there, and I needed to revise and add him in. I changed the ending. I changed the beginning. So a lot of it was just sort of figuring out, how do I tell this story better? How do I tell this story so that it's a page turner? I also had to do some figuring out around, as I was presenting material from, Bora community life, I had to figure out, how do I write that for a wide audience so I don't confuse people too much? I didn't want to have a glossary. That was quite important to me. We could talk about that, but I needed to think about what might people not really understand here. Yeah.
Let's talk about the glossary. Why did you feel that it was really important not to have it?
So I think that if I'm reading a book about a culture or community that I don't have any experience with at all. So let's say I was reading Abba Homa's book about Kurdish people in Iran, or I'm reading about Sherry Dimoline's characters who are Métis characters in Ontario. I expect to do the work. I don't expect to be spoon-fed. So I might, in my own writing, if I'm presenting a new concept for a reader, I will explain it once. And then after that, I expect people, if they're still confused, to look it up. And that's what I do as a reader as well. And it's a way of decolonizing literature, actually, to not expect that white Canadian life is the norm. But if we expect that all of these cultures are the norm and we just don't know enough about them, then it's up to us to educate ourselves. So I don't have any of the Gujarati words in italics, any of the Arabic words in italics. Why should they be in italics, right?
Thank you for explaining that. You're speaking to something here that form is just as important as the content of the story, and how we have expectations about the form, that we need to break down some of those expectations to tell stories differently, to, as you said, decolonize, to challenge perhaps racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, all those pieces. And we're seeing more people shift the form. Tell us more about what that looks like in your novels. You shifted the form in terms of not using italics and not using a glossary. Are there other things that you are doing or would like to see?
I think one other thing that I do is I have a bit of, what is it called? Magical realism. I have a bit of magical realism throughout, because magic is very much a part of so many cultures. I don't even know why we call it magical realism. I think it's just, a regular part of our cultures, right? So I bring that in. I bring in ghosts. So in All Inclusive, there was a ghost character. In this novel, there's an ancestor whose story is alongside Sharifa's story. And that was to show how our ancestors are always with us, and their legacies are what we inherit. So that's something I think I like to bring in.
I love that. I think I need to have like a follow-up call with you, just one-on-one, to talk about magic realism. I'm passionate about it, and I'm pretty sure I don't understand it very well. So yeah, table that. You need to educate me a little bit on this on a one-on-one basis. All right. So you're working on a young adult novel as well. So you do poetry, you do fiction. I'm sure you do nonfiction as well in other places. And young adult novel is one that you're working on right now. Tell us more about this project that you're working on and other projects that you may be looking to go from here.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I started writing a young adult novel as I was in waiting stages with Seven. Seven was a book that took about 4 years to come out into the world. And people might not know, but, there's lots of waiting. You submit to your agent and you wait for a while, and then the agent might be submitting to publishers and you're waiting and all this kind of stuff. So during the waiting times, I started a young adult novel, and I don't know what its title is, but it's inspired by this one very weird year when I was 15 and I went to a boarding school, which I hated. And so it's inspired by, some of the elements that, and I'm very much mining memory while fictionalizing as well. So that's the young adult. And that's been a new experience because this is a different genre. Everything else I've written, in terms of fiction has been contemporary adult, literary fiction. So to write a book that is supposed to be for younger people, and, young adult novels cross over to adult all the time, right? Like I like reading young adult too. So that's been interesting just to think about, like, what do you know when you're 16, and what can you not know yet, and how do you describe things differently because of that?
So you're speaking to this idea of everybody's reading everything now. I think young adults are reading quote unquote adult novels, and adult novels are, crossing over everywhere. Young adult novels are like becoming movies, becoming blockbusters. Like it's just such a genre crossing moment. Tell me more about the genres that you would like to see cross. Different people reading different things. Do you have any thoughts around that?
I haven't thought very much about that, actually, because I haven't moved very much out of it. But I hope one day to like do some fantasy and sci-fi, because that's fun to read too. And just the ways that those writers have to spend so much time building a world, right? That is not the world that any of us and the readers understand. So I don't know about other crossovers, but because I don't feel very educated about all of that, but that's one I would like to try one day.
Nice. Are you inspired by any particular writers in what do they call it? Sci-fi, speculative fiction?
Taya Lim.
Mhm.
I read her book, An Ocean of Minutes, last year, and holy, it just stayed with me for so long. Um, it's so beautifully written. First of all, like its prose is just so gorgeous. But the actual story, like I have never seen anything like that before. So everyone go read her book.
Great recommendation.
Well,
Well, we made it to our lightning round questions. These are just really
no.
quickie questions that we would love your top of the head thoughts. What do you love most about the writing process?
I love the editing process the most. And I think maybe that's because most of it is already there. And all I'm doing is playing at that point. I'm playing with like creating metaphors and, improving the prose. It feels like it's the cleanup. It's the vacuuming into the corners. And I also like vacuuming, by the way. I got
Okay.
a really good vacuum. So yeah.
Oh, makes sense. I need a better vacuum. We have to talk about that as well too. What do you dread most about the writing process? Dread.
Yeah. So I think I like the very beginning when there's the initial uprush and you've got so much hope about the book, but that's only like 20 pages or something. And then I dread the next section. It's like, is this going to be anything? What if it's not nothing? What if it's not going to be anything? What do I do with these 20 pages? How do I structure this? Like what is this? Is this going to be a novel if I just wasted all my time? So there you go. All the anxiety at that stage.
I don't know if people realize this, but like writing long form fiction it's torture. It's torture. Sometimes I wonder why we do it, but when you're done, it feels so great. It's just a roller coaster. So thank you for that. I thought I was the only one who instantly loses my will to live at page 15. Okay, good to know.
Oh yeah. What's your favorite part?
My favorite part is the editing as well too. I mean, I hate house cleaning, so I don't understand how it works, but I do find myself like when I don't have to write and I'm like, I'm done. I'm just, playing, just, making it sharper. I'm just moving a word here and there. It's not nearly as daunting. I totally relate to
And
that.
some people hate the editing and I don't understand it, but I think it might have to do with just our brains and how we like process differently, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
I have a little bit of type A in me.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Oh, editing is great for type A personalities. It actually saves other people from your type A-ness. When you just get to spend a good couple of hours editing, suddenly you're a nicer person. It's magic.
that's right. You're no longer editing other people. You're
Yeah,
editing just your book.
that's right. You're letting them live. And we saw this beautiful comment from one of our viewers, saw the book, got it, and haven't been able to put the book down. Thank you.
Oh,
Isn't that
thank you so
lovely?
much. Thank you so much.
I felt the same way too, honestly. I read it really quickly, and I'm not the quickest reader, so that is saying something. All right, I have another hard question for you. What have you binge watched or listened to or read lately?
So, in the early part of the pandemic, I watched all of Grey's Anatomy that exists on Netflix. So that's like 15 seasons. So I watched a lot of TV, and I found it really interesting because my dad was a surgeon, and I
Mm,
found myself really honing in on these surgeons' personalities because it's always good to understand your own people a little bit better. But I want to shout out something that might be lesser known. So I just binge watched Masaba Masaba,
hmm
and this is a sort of pseudo reality documentary. Not really. I think they fictionalized it between Masaba Gupta and Nina Gupta. Now, Nina Gupta, if people remember from Chole Ki Piche, that song that was like a hit in the um,
Mm,
like early mid 90s. Choli ke piche kya hai?
Mhm.
Yeah, you know that one?
You're bringing back some 90s memories. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, she's from that, and so they're a mother-daughter pair, and it's this, Netflix original of the two of them living their lives in Mumbai, and you get to see like how the rich people in Mumbai live, and
Nice.
the Masaba is a hot mess the whole time, and it's just really fun.
That's fun. I just like any recommendation that's not Indian Matchmaker right now. And that's been pushed
I
on
did
pretty
that
hard.
one.
You did that one.
I binged that one too.
All right, we'll talk. We'll talk. Okay, so you have a dog. What's the best thing about this dog?
Oh, just everything, dogs are just like full of love, and they're always in the moment, right? And my Maggie, I got her as a rescue when she was 1 year old, and she's now, I think, about like she's 12 and a half. So she's now like my old dog companion. So she's really easy. At this point, we communicate very clearly with one another. We know each other really well. And one of the things she will do for me when I have been sitting too long, like writing or watching Netflix or whatever, is she will come and she will put her paw and she'll start pawing my leg. And it means we have to go and do something else.
Oh my goodness.
She is a great, behavior mod.
Wow.
Dog.
So twin dog. That's lovely.
Yeah. And she wakes me up every day very happy, right? And like, that's nice. She's trained me to wake up saying, it's a brand new day. It's a brand new day.
Oh, I appreciate that. Listen, that kind of optimism, that's hard to deny. I'm not a pet person, but I must say that optimism makes me feel like maybe I need to become one. If you weren't a writer or a social worker, you would be a what?
So this is fantasy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was young, I was writing a lot of plays and acting them out for whoever would watch or whoever was forced to be in the same room as me. So I think I would be like a theater actor. I don't even know if I have the right word. Mm-hmm.
Nice. I guess it's. Oh, I was going to use a fancy word. I think it's just actor. Okay.
I think it's just actor.
I think it's just actor. Yeah. Words. Yeah. When the pandemic is over, what are you most looking forward to?
I think it's just having ready access to people and being able to be not unself-conscious in the small social gatherings. It's super awkward to have any kind of social gathering right now because of keeping space and all of that, and fear, lots of fear. So I think it's just being able to be easy again with social gatherings. And I have to tell you that I had my book launch last night, and I knew that there were a lot of people there, but I couldn't see them. And because of the platform we were on, it wasn't like this. I couldn't see any of the comments or anything. So it was so disorienting. At the end of it, I was like, oh, what just happened here? Was this a launch? Thank you.
Did I just talk to myself?
Yeah, it was really disorienting. So one day having book events in person too, I think will be nice.
That's lovely. This is a hopeful question when it's over. I hope it truly is over at some point. But what about this? This is a new normal we're all kind of living through. What about this new normal do you hope actually continues?
Yeah. So I hope that, so I think about CERB and how there's been so many conversations about CERB and, guaranteed income. I would really love to see, things like ODSP go up to CERB levels. I would love it if, there was just more emphasis on people's well-being rather than capitalism. I think also one of the things that's come about through these kinds of virtual events is that they are fairly accessible, not 100%, but more accessible geographically. Also, you know, it's accessible in terms of like the venue. So many literary venues have not been accessible enough, and so I hope that after all of this, people remember, right, that they can work a little bit harder to be accessible. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know about what our, like, when this is going to be normal, and I hope that we're vastly improved afterwards.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's either a trial that you're going through, or it's training you for something better. And it can be both things at the same time. And I hope that for folks, it does end up being a dual purpose thing. What makes you feel empowered, especially nowadays?
You know, in terms of this novel, I think about how we are in this moment that is pretty spectacular. You know, Me Too happened, and I think that for people who are writing about and talking about FGM, FGC, we are having our own kind of version of a Me Too movement, because seriously, this has been such a taboo, silenced subject. There's so much shame around it. And that more and more people can talk about it, and that I can talk about it, you know, it is that feels empowering.
Always speaking the hidden story is empowering in many different contexts and ways. What makes you laugh?
Oh, I think I share her with an ex, so she's not always here, and I notice that I laugh so much more when she's around, and you know, she doesn't have to do anything to make me laugh. So yeah.
Okay, this is a really good one. What makes you dance?
Oh, you know, this is interesting because I have actually been dancing more during the pandemic because I've been conscious about not moving enough. You know, both writing and psychotherapy are very sedentary. Plus, especially because we have to be in front of a screen and we have to stay still, right? So I have been working on moving much more. And one of the easy ways for me to do that is in between clients or in between activities, I'll turn on some music and dance. And one of my most favorite, like, recent ones is this guy named Metres Gims. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but I have just been like really like dancing to his music a lot.
Nice, nice. And so we are just going to ask a couple of questions from the audience. Thank you very much for your questions. Now, I think we did get to some of them already, but this is one that I think you did speak to, but just clarify for us. What was the timeline between starting to write 7 and publication?
Yeah, novels take a long time. So I started writing it probably at the very end of 2015, and now it's, you know, near the end of 2020, so 5 years. In the midst of all of that, there were all these gaps where I was waiting for things to happen, waiting for other people to get back to me and that kind of thing. So I would say to actually write the novel, it was probably a year and a half, consistent time, and then the rest of the time was a lot of waiting. And yeah.
And this new novel that you're working on, how long do you expect that to take? A similar amount of time or less?
Yeah, again, it's a bit hard because, you know, you're fitting it in and then you're stopping and starting and all of that. But it's very close to being finished. It's with my agent right now. She might send me a little bit more feedback, or she might get ready to send it out. I don't know. So it's going to be soonish. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I've also got a poetry manuscript that I've been picking away at for the last 5 years as well. And I am looking for, just to put this out there, I'm looking for a publisher for my poetry manuscript as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. I'm really, really impressed. You're very prolific, and not only prolific, but excellent at what you do. And this novel, I just want to remind people, take a look at the cover. It's beautiful. And yes, we both got it. We've got twin copies. I just really want to encourage people that if you want to buy it, you can buy it anywhere where books are sold. And it's available in multiple versions as well, too. There's the physical version as well on paper. There's also an e-version. There's an audio version as well. Support your local bookstore and pick it up. I don't think you will regret it by any means. I felt like I learned a lot. I felt I was on a page turner journey. I felt really connected to the characters, and by the end I was like, gasp. It was everything. It was everything for me. So I really appreciated that. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, Andrea, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. This was really fun.
And many congratulations to you on your launch. This was a very big accomplishment, and you were just launched yesterday. So I hope that as days go on, you get more feedback and it feels like a more real thing, that it actually happened.
Thank you.
So, folks, I just want to thank you very much for joining us. And I really want to mention to you, again, the thing that we started with in the beginning. These days, the Canadian Women's Foundation, we're really focused on the unique ways that the COVID-19 pandemic impacts diverse women and girls. And really, the fact that we need to have a recovery process that resets normal and centers gender and gender equality in everything that we do, policies, practices, approaches. We really need to make sure that women and girls in every province and territory get the support they need and the service that they need for their unique needs. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. So I just really want to encourage you that if you would like to give to this effort and you are able to, go check out our website at CanadianWomen.org. We have the Tireless Together Fund, and all the funds that we raise will go to pandemic support and recovery as well, too. And I also just want to focus on a couple of events that are coming up, and I think they're very related. We have this 5 bold ideas for gender equality in the pandemic. And this is going to feature our wonderful Canadian Women's Foundation CEO. This is Paulette Senior. She's our president and our CEO, and she's going to speak to some bold ideas that we need to do something about right now. And really, I think this is important ahead of the throne speech that's coming up on the 23rd. And this event we're going to do is on the 22nd. So join us. It'll be a half hour. I also want to just focus on the next live stream that we're having with Tessa McWatt. Tessa McWatt recently put out a memoir called Shame on Me, An Anatomy of Race and Belonging. This book was also quite beautiful. I read it in 3 days. I'm not a quick reader, as I said, and somehow these books that we're seeing right now are really getting me going, and I'm able to read it really quickly because they're so great. So I really would encourage you to join us for this next Friday, September the 25th at 2:00. And yeah, just want to tell you again, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful support, and thank you for just really joining us for all these live streams. And I would encourage you, again, pick up this book at a local bookstore, and make sure to visit our website if you would like to learn more about the Tireless Together Fund and the Canadian Women's Foundation. And I'm going to leave you with this video on resetting normal now after the pandemic.
When COVID-19 spread in Canada, women were affected beyond the virus. Women accounted for almost 2/3 of early job losses, despite making up only half the paid workforce. Risks of violence increased, and calls to crisis lines surged. Demands of caregiving, homeschooling, and work skyrocketed. The virus can infect anyone, but the pandemic's impacts are different for some people. It has deepened inequalities for diverse women and two-spirit, trans, and non-binary people. As we rebuild from the pandemic, we can't accept a new normal where people are worse off than before. Let's reset normal by putting gender equality at the center, because gender equality puts everyone in a position to thrive. Reset normal so everyone gets a living wage and equal pay, so everyone is safe from gender-based violence. So childcare, elder care, and housing are safe, affordable, and accessible. Act now. Let's reset normal. Sign the petition.